Welcome to today's session on analog and digital signals. In this session, we are going to learn about the basics of signals and their categorization into two types, analogs and digital. In the previous session, we have discussed the concept of Internet of Things at a higher level. And we saw that at the very first level, we have data acquisition using different kinds of sensors, electronic devices, which gather data, and following that, there is other processes like processing of data, storage of data, communication of data, and building applications based on that data. So the starting point is acquisition of data. Acquisition of data from physical world into our electronic devices, which are responsible for all further actions. So before we go any further and try to develop any project on electronic devices or IoT devices, it's important that we have a good understanding of the signals and the data. So let us go ahead. Here is the outline of the session. First, we are going to talk about the basics of signals. We need to understand what is a signal and what are the systems which process that signal. So your electronic devices, embedded systems, which are responsible for acquisition and processing of those signals, they are essentially forming the signal processing systems or data processing systems. It is also equally important to be aware of noise, which is an unwanted signal, quote unquote. So this basically interferes with our normal useful data signal and corrupts the information. Next, we understand the difference between analog and digital signals. What is meant by analog signal and why it needs to be converted into digital signal, why most of the processing happens in digital signal, all those things we need to understand. And also the conversion between analog and digital, what are the important parameters that we need to be aware of. Following that, there will be some discussion on analog to digital conversion, because this is very much integrated into our embedded systems in our electronic devices, where we have sensors, where we have data acquisition. So just a high level overview of what is involved in analog to digital conversion. And following that, some of the important matrices like precision of digital data and storage and communication of digital data will be discussed. Let us go ahead and dive deeper into understandings of signals. So signals is a function that conveys information about a phenomenon. In terms of electronics, it can be a voltage, current, or electromagnetic wave which is carrying some information. So if you are using a voltage waveform, if you're encoding a voltage or current waveform with information, then it becomes a signal. We are getting some information of a pattern of changing voltage or current. Likewise, signal can be changed in any observable physical quantity. It's not necessary that it has to be current or voltages. Of course, for electronic devices, it has to be in the form of currents and voltages, which can be processed electronically. But signals in a broader sense can be changed in any measurable physical quantity, which can be measured and detected or converted into electronic signal for our devices to be able to process it. So signal is a function of time. So it is going to, the physical quantity is going to vary or change over time, and it is going to convey some information through that change. Examples are force acting on a mass, or maybe output voltage of a circuit, or acoustic pressure at some point. So we can denote signal mathematically as a function of time, right? So we have probably studied so many equations, so many physical laws where we have different kinds of signals: pressure signal, force signals, output voltage, current signals. There's different kinds of signals associated with many different kinds of systems. And they are going to be these variables, the physical variables, they are going to be function of time. So this is a waveform of a sinusoidal signal. It's like a time varying pressure signal in this case. This is the y-axis showing the pressure signal in Pascal, and the x-axis the time in milliseconds. It just shows that how the pressure in a particular system is varying over time. So in this case, the pressure is actually a signal which can be maybe converted into electrical signal. We are familiar with many different kinds of signals in our daily life. Radio signals, TV signal, audio signal, video signals, telephone signals, signals that come through Ethernet. All these are examples of signals that we are making use of in our day-to-day life. So how do we measure a signal, or how do we measure the physical variable? That work is done by a sensor. The sensor is responsible for converting the physical signal corresponding to change in a physical parameter into a measurable electrical quantity. So electronic devices will work with electronic voltage and currents, right? So in order to be able to process a signal, the signal must be present in the form of electronic voltage, current, or maybe magnetic flux, electromagnetic flux. So any device which converts a physically varying parameter into corresponding electronic signal can be regarded as a sensor. So the term commonly used is transducer. Transducer is a device which transforms a signal from one form to another form. For an electronic transducer, which is a sensor, it should be able to transform a physical signal, maybe pressure, maybe force, maybe sound, maybe your electromagnetic flux, into an electronic signal which is current or voltage, which can be processed by an electronic device. So that is the role of a sensor. It captures the signal coming from any physical source and makes it available in the form of an electronic variable, which is voltage or current, so that it can be processed by the electronic device. For example, if you talk about, say, an audio system, where the first step is recording of voice. So voice signal ultimately is produced by changes in pressure in the air, right? So that variation in pressure falling on a transducer or an acoustic transducer basically results in conversion of pressure into an electrical signal. So in this case, the task of this transducer is to convert the variation in air pressure at a particular point into a corresponding electrical signal, which may be a voltage. So without going into the details of how the sensor works, this function of this particular sensor is to convert the pressure signal carrying the audio information into an electronic signal, which can be then converted into electronic data and processed using our electronic devices. And you can also communicate this data, store this data, process this data. There is, of course, another kind of transducer which is going to do the reverse. Like when you have a digital data or an electronic data stored in a device, suppose whatever voice you have recorded that has been converted into electronic signal and it has been stored in an electronic device, now you want to hear that back. So now again, that electronic signal needs to be converted into audio signal. That is also done by a transducer. So again, the transducer is coming into picture. It is going to convert that electrical signal into sound signal by creating pressure variations in the air, right? So its job is to take the electrical signal, electrical data stored in the electronic device and produce variation in the air pressure, which basically is heard as sound. So there also the transducer is doing its job, but here it's not a sensor. It is basically a transducer which is converting electrical signal into physical signal, which is audible to our physical senses. Whereas in the first role, the transducer is acting like a sensor. It is converting a physical signal into an electronic signal to be processed and stored in the electronic device. There are many different kinds of sensors possible. We can have mechanical sensors, thermal sensors like temperature and heat sensors. We can have electromagnetic sensors. We can have optical sensors, which can basically sense the intensity of light, which can sense images. So ultimately, all the cameras that we use, they are essentially optical sensors made up of many optical diodes in an array, which can capture the intensity of light and produce images out of it. Likewise, there can be chemical sensors which are responsible for sensing some chemical parameters or chemical composition of various components like water, soil, or any material like pH sensor, moisture sensor, and so on. So sensors can be of many different kinds. So in all these cases, they are sensing some or the other physical signal and converting it into a measurable electronic signal, which can be processed, stored, communicated in electronic form by our electronic devices or by our embedded system or by the IoT devices. So now once we come to the system, so when the sensors have acquired the data, that data is now available with the system. You may have a microphone which has recorded the data. The microphone has a sensor which records your voice, and then the voice goes to the system. It is getting stored into your computer or in your mobile phone. So mobile phone has electronic memory where all this data is getting stored. And then you can carry out certain function, you can filter your voice, you can make certain changes. So you can process that data that you have recorded. So that is the system. The system is capable of transforming the input signal, making changes, doing some computation, deriving some information, or simply communicating or storing the signal that you have. So that is a system. A simple example of a system is an amplifier, right? So as shown here, the bottom you can see a triangle symbol. Triangular symbol is basically an amplifier. It is having an input signal U, which is a time varying variable, maybe a current or voltage, and correspondingly the amplifier is producing the output signal Y. And the relationship between Y and U is simple. Y is A times U. This is just a scaling function. So this is a simple system which is just scaling up or down the input T. If A is greater than 1, then the U is going to be a magnified version of Y, whereas if A is less than 1, it is going to be an attenuated or suppressed version of Y. This is a simple example of a system. Another example, this RLC circuit. All of you have studied RLC circuits in your class 12, class 11th. Here, once again, you can consume that the input signal is a current. You may have a time varying current signal. It may be a sinusoid signal, it can be a square pulse, it can be a rectangular pulse, it can be a triangular pulse, it can be a ramp function. Irrespective of that, it is a variable of time. It may be a constant also. It may be a constant current. So here in this case, it is a function of time, and it is entering into this RLC system, parallel combination of R, L, and C. And this RLC system is going to produce an output signal, which is VT. Because of this input signal current applied to the system of RLC, an output signal VT is being produced. And the relationship between VT and IT is given by this differential equation. All of you are familiar with this. So this system can be represented in form of this differential equation relating the input signal and the output signal. Likewise, there are many other systems which may also be expressed with the help of this kind of equations, like this force and mass system. You have a spring attached to a mass and you have a force being applied. So we have studied how this system can be represented with the help of similar differential equation. So the input signal here may be the F, or the force which is being applied, and the output signal may be the displacement or the velocity of the mass m. So once again, you have an applied input signal and you are having a resulting output signal which you can also measure. Only thing is, in this case, none of them are electrical signal. Whereas in the other example, in the RLC circuit, both of them are electrical signals. IT is an electrical signal and VT is also an electrical signal. Whereas in this case of force is not an electrical signal as such, but you can convert it into an electrical signal and measure it electronically also. When we talk about electronic devices, we are more concerned with electronic signals, which can be, as we have seen earlier, produced by sensors. They can convert any physical signal in any different form into an electronic signal, which can be measured and processed by electronic device. Likewise, let us talk about an unwanted signal, which is noise. So noise, as the name suggests, is something which is undesired and it is creating disturbance in the desired signal. So as shown in the plot, you can see we have a sinusoid signal in the first plot where there is no noise. It's a clean sinusoid signal, red color. But now, because of some disturbance in the surrounding, because of some noise in the surrounding, we are having some noise signal, the gray colored noise signal, getting coupled with the signal. So we can see definitely it distorts the desired signal. It corrupts the desired signal and basically it destroys the information. So as the noise amplitude increases, the corruption of the desired signal also goes up. So you can see in the third plot, the desired signal is further being suppressed. And in the fourth plot, you can see the noise is so dominant, it is so high that we will completely lose the desired signal. We will not be able to detect the desired signal at all. So generally, the ratio of noise amplitude and the signal amplitude is expressed in terms of signal to noise ratio. If the signal to noise ratio is good, that means your signal is strong and the noise is weak. Whereas the signal to noise ratio is bad, that means the noise is very high. So we can see then the third and the fourth plot at the bottom, the signal to noise ratio is very poor because the noise is very high. We should be aware of this term, signal to noise ratio. Now coming to analog versus digital signals. So here we can take several examples. What do we mean by analog signals and what do we mean by digital signals? So suppose we have a temperature sensor which is exposed to the environment and it is trying to capture the ambient temperature. So again, there is a heat energy which is falling on it. There is an ambient temperature, and because of that heat, because of that ambient temperature, there may be some parameters within this sensor changing and converting that information into electrical signal. So we are not going to go into detail of it. To just conceptually understand that here, this sensor is doing a simple job of converting the heat energy into an electrical signal. So if you observe the voltage produced by this sensor over the time, over the day, for example. So when the temperature is highest in the daytime and the noon time, it will peak, the voltage will peak. And then gradually, as the sun sets and we go deeper into night, the temperature will go down. And just before the sunrise, maybe the temperature will be lowest. So we have a kind of periodic function almost, and the signal over here is varying continuously between a maximum and the minimum voltage. So as the temperature goes up and down, the output voltage produced by this temperature sensor keeps going up and down in a continuous manner. So it has continuous values at any point of time, and it can be anywhere between 0 and 5 volt. Maximum voltage may be 5 volt, minimum is 0 volt. So at any point of time t, the value produced by this sensor can be anywhere between 0 and 5 volt, and it will provide us any value between 0 and 5 volt at any time t that we want to observe. Digital signal, on the other hand, is having only two levels, either high or low. That high or low can be different values of voltages. It can be 0 volt or 5 volt, 0 volt or 1 volt, 0 volt or 2 volt, minus 2 volt, plus 2 volt. So depending upon the electronic supply that we have and the devices we have, the levels may be, the absolute value of these levels may be different, but the digital signal is going to have two levels, 0 and the low level and the high level. For example, when we have to say turn on a switch, here I have shown a light bulb connected to a battery with the help of a switch. So in order to turn this switch on and off, I will just need a digital signal. When the voltage applied to the switch is high from outside, the bulb should glow. So here I will need a digital signal. So turning on and off the switch requires a digital control signal, which is going to be either high or low. So this is an example of a digital signal. It will acquire only one of the two values, high or low. So in terms of benefits, analog signals, they are having continuous values. They can take any value between a set of extremes, and therefore they are more susceptible to noise. So we have seen the previous waveforms also. If there is significant amount of noise, it can corrupt the analog signal. Whereas digital signals are having only two values, high or low. So even if there is some corruption in the digital signal, we can still, to a reasonable extent, we can still detect the high and low levels, as long as the noise is not too high. So conceptually, if you understand, in the digital signal, we are not concerned with precise levels between 0 and 5. These are just two levels, 0 or 5. Whereas in analog signals, we are concerned with precise value. What is the value of that signal between 0 and 5? So there, if there is a noise coming, even say 0.1 volt of noise coming, our actual information at that point is getting lost. Whereas for digital signal, that's not really the case. I can just see whether, as compared to the midpoint, say 2.5 volt, whether my signal is higher than that or lower than that. So in most of the cases, I will be able to detect the digital signal reliably. So conceptually speaking, digital signals are more robust towards noise. Also, digital signals are easy to process and store. We'll see that all the digital devices we see, whether it is memory, whether it is processors, all of them operate with digital signals. The processors have so many digital components for storing the digital data, like registers, memory, flip-flops. So all of these are storing digital bits, ones or zeros. So it is easy to store, communicate, and process digital signals. Therefore, we go for digitization. Analog signals are converted into digital signals. In this diagram, the noise concept is explained. Like if you're having the analog signal getting corrupted with noise, definitely there is a significant loss of information. Whereas digital signal, I just need to compare with respect to midpoint, whether the signal is high or low. As long as the noise is not too high, it will just corrupt the high or low levels a little bit. I can still find out whether the signal level is high or low. Therefore, it is more robust towards noise. So now let us look at the conversion. How do we convert analog to digital, and what are the parameters involved in this conversion process? So if you look at this waveform shown here, the dark curve, the dark black curve, it shows an analog signal varying over time. Remember, it is continuous in time as well as amplitude. Amplitude means the signal level. So on the y-axis, I have a voltage signal level, and on the x-axis, we have time. So it is simply a plot of a voltage signal varying over time. Now, if you want to digitize this signal, there are two steps involved in that. First is called sampling, and second is called quantization. What do you mean by sampling? Sampling means that we can store or we can detect the analog signal value at certain time intervals. So at certain finite time intervals separated by these time gaps, we can sample the analog values. And then the next step is quantization. We need to encode it. We need to basically assign some digital value to it. So let us try to understand this with the help of these two plots. So in the digitization process, the first step I said is sampling. So this is a continuously varying analog signal, but in order to convert it into digital signal, we need to sample it at certain fixed intervals, as shown by these vertical lines. So at these time instances shown by these vertical lines, the signal will be sampled. And once this analog signal is sampled, we need to assign a digital value to it. That is called quantization. So this is shown by the second plot over here on the right hand side, where you can see horizontal slots. So an analog signal which is lying between any of the two horizontal slots, suppose the signal at a particular time t, a particular slot delta t over here is lying between these two levels. In this case, the signal value, the digital value will be assigned corresponding to one of these two levels, suppose the higher one. So in that case, if the signal is between any two levels, we can say that it will be assigned the higher level. That means it will not be assigned any intermediate value between these two levels. As long as the signal is lying between these two and signal levels, it will always be assigned the upper value. That means the digital signal cannot take any continuous value. It can take only one of these values corresponding to the horizontal markings. So this is called quantization. So this quantization marks, the signal is lying between any of these two quantization marks. The digital value corresponding to the mark get assigned to the signal. So here in this curve, we have the same concept shown. So you can see the analog input, and then it is a sampled signal. So here we have a sampling clock. If you should look at the bottom figure, we have a small rectangular waveform shown. This is called a clock waveform. So in a system, clock is responsible for sampling. So at every rising edge of this clock signal, the data will be sampled. So we will be storing the analog signal available at every positive edge, rising edge of this clock signal. So that is a sampled signal. And next we need to allocate a digital value to it in forms of zeros and one. That is called the encoding process. So let us see how this works. So suppose for a sinusoid signal, we want to digitize it using 2 bits. So we have decided that there are going to be 2 bits of digital data. What does 2-bit mean? 2 bits you can have 4 possible values, 00, 01, 10, 11. Now I can assign these digital values to the 4 levels that I have, because I am choosing 2 bits, so I am forced to encode my analog signal among only 4 values. It can take only one of those 4 values, either 00, 01, 10, or 11. Therefore, if the signal level at a particular time, suppose the sample level is between, say, 10 and 11. So in this case, I'm going to assign, say, a value of 10 to it. If it is higher than a particular threshold between 10 and 11, it will be assigned 11. So we are comparing the signal level. If the signal is higher than the mid value over here, we are assigning it 11 in this period. If it is lower, we are assigning 10. Likewise, at other points, if you see here, the signal can be compared with a threshold at this point. So depending upon whether the signal is higher or lower than this horizontal mark, it can be assigned 01 or 00. So depending upon the signal level, we are getting the 2-bit value. So here definitely it looks like a coarse representation of the sinusoid wave. If we go for larger number of bits, as shown in the second plot, the signal becomes closer to the sinusoid wave. Here we have 3-bit representation. 3 bits means you can have 8 values, right? Each bit can take 2 possible values, 0 or 1. Therefore, if you have 3 bits, each of them can take 2 possible values. Therefore, how many total different number of possible combinations are possible? 2 to the power of 3. So you have 8 combinations. So now in our second case, the signal can be encoded into 8 possible levels. Therefore, once again, depending upon the range of the signal, we have 8 thresholds determined, 8 different segments determined, depending upon the value of the signal, where it is lying as compared to these segments. We assign it one of these 8 digital codes. This is the process of quantization and encoding. So we are able to convert the continuously varying analog signal into digital signal. Of course, you can understand if the number of levels are more and more, it will be closer and closer to the actual analog value. So you can see here we have shown another kind of real-time varying signal where the blue one is a analog signal and the red one is a quantized signal. So once again, you can see it is going to be a cruder representation. Whereas if you have more and more number of levels or number of bits in the digital data, you will have more closer representation of the analog signal in the digital data. Of course, you may say that then why at all we go for lower number of bits? Because lower number of bits means lower amount of memory required for storing the data, lower bandwidth required for communicating the data, lower power required for processing the data, smaller time required for processing the data. So having smaller number of bits for data is advantageous in number of ways. But again, precision is an important requirement for many applications. So we need to see how many bits of the data we want. Many sensors that you will use also have it can provide you digital data directly, provided it has an analog to digital converter that we will see. And there also, it may have a certain precision fixed as per the requirement of the application. So the second plot over here shows the quantization error. Like as compared to the actual signal, what is the quantization error coming as a function of time? So let's talk about the analog to digital converter, which is an integral part of our electronic embedded system or electronic devices or sensor nodes, which are supposed to acquire data. So we have seen that there is a sensor generally which is responsible for acquisition of physical data. Any physical parameter like sound signal may be converted into electrical signal, voltage or current with the help of a sensor. Now suppose that sensor is producing an analog voltage like this, the red color analog voltage waveform, which is getting input into an A to D converter or ADC, analog to digital converter. Acronym of analog to digital converter is ADC. So this ADC is responsible for producing the quantized sample digital data. So every fixed interval, suppose every 1 millisecond, this ADC is sampling the analog signal at different points. So every 1 millisecond, it will take the analog value and produce the n bit digital value corresponding to that, depending upon how many bits the ADC has. So suppose it is a 3-bit ADC, then it is going to have 3 bits output. So here it is a transfer function of an ADC given. On x-axis, we have the input analog signal. Fs here means full scale. That is the maximum value of the analog signal, and 0 is the minimum value. And y-axis shows the digital bit, the digital output produced by the ADC, which is basically the digital encoded data. This is basically digital data or digitized form of the input signal, which has been produced by the ADC. It is a 3-bit digitized data. So here we can see, depending upon where the signal level is, we have 8 possible values. Depending upon the location of the signal level, we can assign one of these values to the digital data. So it is all about comparing the analog signal with some thresholds and assigning an appropriate bit combination. If it is the lowest, then it is 0, 0, 0. If it is highest, it has to be assigned 1, 1, 1. Anywhere in between, depending upon the comparison levels, it gets assigned to one of these values. So the output is like the transfer function is like a step. It's a staircase kind of transfer function, because if the data is between two particular limits, two particular comparison thresholds, it will be assigned 0, 0, 1. Again, if it crosses the comparison threshold, if it is between the next higher comparison thresholds, it will be assigned 0, 1, 0. So between these two comparison thresholds, it remains constant. The output remains constant as 0, 1, 0. When the data crosses the next comparison threshold, then it gets, the digital data gets 0, 1, 1. So we can see that there is a step kind of transfer function coming. So we should have a rough understanding of this, that how this conversion takes place and what is the response of an ADC for an input analog signal. So here in this plot, we show that if you have higher sampling rate, that means in the time domain, you are sampling more frequently, then of course you will be able to get a closer representation of data. So in these plots, the x-axis is the time axis. So you can see as we go from from the upper side A, B, and lower side AB, when you go from the top left corner, second one, and going towards the bottom right corner, we have the time slots becoming smaller and smaller. That means we are sampling the analog data much more frequently. So the dotted curve is the actual analog signal, and the blue curve is the resulting digital signal. So if the and the y-axis is the quantization level. In the first top corner diagram, there are just 3 quantization levels. In the next one, there are 8 quantization levels. After that, there are 16 quantization levels, and then final figure here 32 quantization levels. You can see that if the quantization levels, that is the number of bits, is increasing, then the digital data has closer resemblance to the analog data, right? 32 quantization levels means 5 bit. So rather than 2 bit, I have now 5 bits, and therefore I have a closer representation of the analog data into the digital in the form of a digital data. Same thing shown over here. So as the sampling rate goes higher and higher, we have better representation of the analog data. Likewise, as the resolution, the number of quantization levels become higher and higher, we have closer and closer representation of analog data into digital form. So both ways, either you can increase the number of bits or the number of quantization levels for improving the data precision in digital domain, or you can increase the sampling rate. So both of them basically help you in improving the accuracy, or we can say precision, of the digital data. So once you have this digital data, this can be stored in digital registers. So in digital processors that are responsible for all the computing, running our algorithms, they are having memories, they are having registers. So they are storing this digital data. So suppose there is a digital storage element called register. It is going to store these ones and zeros produced by the ADC. And here there are some important definitions. The individual 1 and 0 is termed as bit. So the bit can be either 1 or 0. Combination of 4 bits is a nibble. Combination of 8 bits is a byte. And combination of multiple bytes can be a word. So word is again a parameter, definition of the word can vary. It's not necessary that only 2 bytes can form a word. Depending upon the electronic system, you may have maybe 4 bytes forming a word, 16 bytes forming a word. So that is a system level definition. But the bit, nibble, byte, they are pretty standard. So 8 bits make a byte. And we understand the binary representation, how the place value system works for the bit representation. So suppose your ADC is producing 8-bit data, the output is 8-bit. So in that case, you have the least significant number, which is the LSB, and the most significant number, which is the MSB. They have their own place values. So each of these bits can be 1 or 0. What is the place value for what is the weight for the first bit? It is 2 to the power of 0. That means 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 0. Second, 2 to the power of 1. That means if you have 1 over here, the value of this one is 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 1. Third bit is having weight of 2 to the power of 2. Therefore, if you have a 1 stored over here, its value will be 1 into 2 to the power of 2. 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 2, and so on. So if you have all ones, suppose in this 8-bit data you have all ones, what is the value of the number? 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 0 plus 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 1 plus 1 multiplied by 2 to the power of 3, and so on. And corresponding to that, if you have any places having zeros, then that of course gets multiplied by, that particular term gets multiplied by 0. So I hope we all are familiar with this conversion, like how do we basically read the digital value. If you have an 8-bit digital value, how do we get the decimal? This is like the digital to or binary to decimal conversion. Given an 8-bit digital number, you should be able to convert it into a decimal number. So if you have an 8-bit ADC, it will be giving you this kind of 8-bit data for every sample, and we should be able to understand what is the corresponding digital corresponding decimal value for that 8-bit data. So generally, all this data is communicated between different ICs or within the IC in the digital form using data buses. So for example, you may have an 8-bit data bus which is carrying these 8 bits of ADC to the processor, or you may have 8-bit data buses carrying data from the processor to some other IC, maybe memory IC, and so on. So the multi-bit data can be communicated between different chips within the embedded system or within an electronic device. So here there is another example of analog versus digital systems in an embedded product or in an embedded system, which is an electronic device, electronic board like your motherboard in the computer, which is having several ICs. It may be having sensors, it may be having processor, it may be having memory, it has some other peripheral components as well. It has data buses communicating all this digital data. So suppose you have a embedded system or a motherboard having ICs for processing the sound signal. So once again, at the input side, we have a speaker who is speaking into a mic. The mic is having the sensor or the transducer. This transducer is responsible for converting this audio signal into electrical signal, which is an analog signal. And that analog signal is going to the ADC, converted into a digital signal, maybe an 8-bit data. And that 8-bit data now going to the digital system on your motherboard, where you may have different kinds of processors and memory, which is responsible for processing and storing that data. Now, later point of time, you want to come back and listen to the voice that was recorded. So there, that processor will fetch the data stored in the memory, and it will send it to the output transducer. We have seen that output side also there is a transducer which is responsible for converting this data into physical form. So before that, this there is a DAC or digital to analog converter, which converts this digital binary data into an analog voltage, and that voltage is again converted into physical sound by the transducer, which is a speaker in this case. So I hope we understand the overall sequence of information, how the information is being recorded through a sensor, converted into electronic signal, then digitized with ADC, stored and processed using the digital system, and then retrieved back from the digital system with the help of DAC converted back into the analog. And this analog electronic signal is driving a transducer in the form of a speaker, which is again producing the same physical signal. So we can see that the processing, storage, etc. happens in the digital domain. Therefore, the analog signal is getting converted into digital signal. The same is true for even 2D data, right? So when you talk about, say, image, so here this is a face of Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, but at a very low resolution. So we have used very limited number of pixels to represent the face. This is a very crude representation. You're not even able to recognize what is it. But just at a representation, we can see that each of these pixels in the image, they are also ultimately digital values. In a digital image, all these pixels are digital values. You can see the numbers noted over here. Each of the pixel in the second image has some number. That number represents the intensity level. So if it is completely white, it has very high intensity, close to 256 or 255 to be precise. Why? Because here we may have chosen to have 8-bit resolution. So each of the pixel value will have one of the 8-bit values. 8-bit means 2 to the power of 8 possible levels. That means 256 possible levels. That means if you have very low intensity in a particular area of the image, that means it is dark, it will be giving you close to 0 values. So you can see all the black pixels are having close to 0 values or small values. Whereas the white pixels, that means in that area of the image, the light intensity is highest. And therefore you are going to get highest value, close to the maximum, which is 255. So now you can see that ultimately this digital image is nothing but numbers located to each of these pixels. And therefore we can assign 8-bit values, digital binary values to each of these pixels. If it is 255, it is all 1. 8 bits, all 1. If it is 0, it means all of the 8 bits are 0. Anything in between, we know how to convert. So you can see that even a digital image is ultimately having each of the pixels having digital value, and the number of bits that you assign to these values will determine how many levels each of these pixels are going to have. Likewise, it is also important to look at the resolution in terms of the number of pixels. So just like in the 1D data, if we have closer sampling in the time domain, we have closer representation of the signal in the digital domain. Likewise here, if we have larger number of pixels, we will have closer representation of the image in the digital domain. So we can see that this is the left side image is a high resolution image. What does it mean? It just means that it has many more pixels than the right hand side image. The resolution of this left hand side image is much higher. That means if you look at the number of pixels, maybe it is order of magnitude higher than the right hand side. So what it means is that we are sampling the image in the XY direction at a much higher rate, much higher spatial frequency. That means that basically we have divided the entire intensity map of our view into very, very small regions or pixels, and we are recording the value of intensity in each of these pixels. Then it is giving us a closer representation of the actual image. In the right hand side image, it is a lower resolution. We have used very lesser number of pixels, or we have sampled the intensity map at a very coarse level, which is leading to a coarser image. So again, we should have an idea that actually how a 2D image is basically a signal, a digital signal or an analog signal. So just to emphasize on it further, I have given an example of how this the 2D data is being generated from the image sensor. So image sensor in a camera, it is just having a lens which is responsible for basically focusing the light incident on an array of image sensor. So you can see this checkered board over here. This is nothing else but a image sensor. Each of these boxes in this check, it is going to have a photo sensor. It's basically a diode which converts the light intensity into an electronic current or a voltage. So basically what we have is that each of these squares, we are having a photodiode sitting which is converting the intensity at that point into a voltage signal. Higher is the intensity, higher is the voltage, for simplicity. Now the voltage at each of these points in this plate, it needs to be converted into digital signal. This is analog voltage. Suppose it's a 4x4 image, so we are having 4x4, that means 16 different analog voltages for each of these pixels coming up, and they are converted into digital values with the help of this analog front end, which is having the ADC. And then we get the digital data over here. For each of the pixels, we get maybe 8-bit, 16-bit, whatever, digital data over here, which is then going to the digital processor for storing, processing, etc. So we can understand that if we have more number of pixels over here, so this image sensor has, say, rather than just 4x4, if it has, say, 16x16, that means 256 pixels, it will be able to capture a better image. If it has 1 million pixel, 1 megapixel, that means 1000 pixels on one side, 1000 rows and 1000 columns, we will have even better image. So we are all aware that these days our cameras have several megapixels, 20 megapixel, 30 megapixel cameras are coming up. So in this case, what we are having is, it is an image sensor with that many diodes, that many photo sensors, and they are capturing the intensity of light in that entire region and converting these into equal number of voltages, which are getting converted into digital data stored in our mobile's memory. So likewise, we have several kinds of sensors, analog sensors and digital sensors. Analog sensors shown on the right hand side, they will be producing analog signals. So suppose there is a temperature sensor. So temperature sensor, if it is an analog temperature sensor, it will be giving us analog voltage, a continuously varying analog voltage with time, as we have seen earlier. Whereas the digital sensor, all it does is it has a digitizer or an ADC, analog to digital converter, integrated with it. So it will be maybe amplifying the signal or directly converting this analog signal into digital value, n-bit digital value, and that n-bit digital value is made available to a digital processor. So a digital sensor will be producing digital outputs. and transferring the digital output to a processor. Now, how that transfer happens also, should be clear to us how that transfer of data happens. So again, going back to the same example, here we have an ADC, analog to digital converter, which is responsible for converting this analog signal into digital signal. So I hope we have understood the concept of sampling. So at different time instances, regular interval delta t, these analog signals are getting sampled and converted into digital values after quantization. So now this n-bit digital value, suppose you have an 8-bit digital output at the ADC, that 8-bit output supposed to be transferred to another electronic device, either using a wired connection or using metal connection in the PCB. So this is a printed circuit board where you may have an ADC. Suppose there is a sensor over here. This is blue, this black device that you see, suppose it is a sensor, and it is feeding some analog signal to the ADC which is sitting here. Suppose this is an ADC. And then this ADC is supposed to give us the digitized data and send it to the processor over here. This is a processor. So now, in this case, if we have to transfer these 8 bits to the processor, we will need 8 wires, right? Worst case, we will need 8 wired connections. So from this ADC, we will need 8 wired connection to this processor. So these connections are made using metallic traces that you see. These lines that you see, they are metallic traces connecting the output pins of this ADC to the pins of the processor, through which the data is supposed to travel from the output of the ADC to the input of the processor. Now, if we do this, if we transfer this data parallelly, that means we will need 8 pins and 8 such connections between the ADC and the processor to transfer the data. And that is going to take good amount of space, right? You can understand on this printed circuit board, we will require so many connections between the pins of the ADC and the processor. So the number of pins in these chips are limited, and also the area of the board is limited. So rather than transferring this data parallelly, we would like to do something else. We would like to convert it into serial stream and transfer serial data. That is what is shown over here. So here, this 8-bit of data is converted into a serial stream. That means it is transmitting this data one by one, 1 bit at a time. That is called parallel to serial conversion. Rather than transferring this entire 8-bit of data, we are going to transmit 1 bit at a time using a single connection. So in that case, what happens is there is a serializer needed, which basically takes this 8-bit of ADC data, converts it into a sequential serial stream, and transmits this data one by one to the receiving end. So the receiving side, the processor will be able to receive all this data one by one using a single connection. That is going to be much more efficient in terms of area and the number of pins required. So again, summarizing the same concept here. So if we have to transfer the digitized data in a parallel fashion, then it requires so many pins and so many traces on the embedded system board, right? So for example, here the 8-bit data from the transmitter side, which is the ADC output, is getting transferred to the receiver, which is the microprocessor, parallelly, requiring so many data bits, so many data buses, so many interconnections, and so many pins. Whereas if we serialize that, then it is going to just communicate the serial data. So the D0, D1 up to D7 being communicated one by one with the help of a clock. So this process is called serialization, and it helps in saving the resources, number of pins as well as number of metal traces. So these digital sensors that we see, ultimately they have this kind of serial data transfer. So you may be having just single connection for data transfer, and there is a ADC inbuilt in these sensors, which will be transferring the data one by one. The digitized 8-bit data output will be transferred one by one. So once this one of the data sample of 8-bit is complete, then it will transfer the next 8-bit of the next data sample. After that, another 8-bit of the next data sample, and so on. So each data sample is having 8 bits. So these 8 bits are getting communicated one by one, 1 bit at a time. And once these 8 bits are over, the next data sample, the next 8-bit of the next data sample start getting transferred. This is the way the digital sensors work. So I hope we could get a clear understanding of the digital and analog signals systems, how the processing happens, how the analog to digital conversion happens. I hope we could get a good understanding of the signals as well, 1D, 2D. We could understand what is a sensor, what is the system, what kind of processing systems can do, and what is the need of analog to digital conversion. So with this, we are ready to plunge into some of the electronic devices and look at the overall structure of an embedded system board, which forms an integral part of our IoT system, which is the electronic device required for acquiring, processing, and communicating data.